we got to do some preliminary stuff because fractions come up in these. So we have to just make sure that we can handle some of the fraction stuff that we're going to run across. First of all, we'll be reducing the fractions. So you'll notice that every one of these fractions that we're going to reduce has a 16th in the bottom. The denominator at the bottom is 16. That is because, actually we're going to use this one. That is because in a standard ruler, most of the time, the smallest mark between two lines is a 16th. If you count them from starting at the 7, for example, here, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16 when I get to the next inch. So we're going to measure to the nearest 16th of an inch. If you have a metal ruler, this won't work because it's only to eighths, and the other side is just a nightmare because it's to, I think these are 30 seconds, and this is 64ths. So don't use that side. We're going to use this right here. So the ruler I had a moment ago, I just realized, is really not what you want to use because it is only into eighths, I believe. So we don't want to use that guy. Let me go get a better one. This will work better. So before we start on that though, so we got to be able to reduce fractions, because if we count 14/16ths, that's not how we're going to be required to write our answer. So what I tell people is this. Now, you might be able to look at some of these and reduce them right off the top of your head, and that's fine. But if not, here's a quick rule to help you. What you do is divide the top number, and it's important that you do both, and the bottom number by 2, and keep doing it until the top number is odd. So for example, and you can, by the way, I'm going to move a little quicker. You can always pause the video and write that down and then move on. So I'm just going to keep moving. I'm going to leave it up to you to pause when I'm going too fast. So looking at 14/16ths. Both are even. I'm going to divide both of them by 2. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Do I have to divide by 2 again? Well, no, because I've got to the point where the top number is odd. 7 is an odd number. So I'm done. I've reduced that all the way to 7/8. Let's try 6/16ths. So divide the top by 2, that's a 3. Divide the bottom by 2, that's an 8. So this is equivalent to 3/8. That's done because that's an odd number. What about this next one? So many of you out there are looking at it right now and just automatically know, well, that's a half because 8 is half of 16, and that's fine. If you can jump straight to it, great. But let's say someone doesn't see that right away. If you do my little method, it'll still come out to be a half. It might just take a little longer. So if I divide both of these by 2, I get 4/8. But we're not done yet because this isn't odd. So we're going to divide again. 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. Still not there, because that's still not odd. But if I divide one more time, I should be okay. Divide 2 by 2, and I get 1. Divide 4 by 2, and I get 2. And then sure enough, I get the half that I probably guessed early in the problem. But notice the method works. If you keep on dividing by 2 until you can't anymore, until that's odd, then you'll get it. Just make sure you divide top and bottom. So this one, I would recommend that you pause the video and try the next 3, and then start it up again and see if you did it. I will tell you right now, you should notice, this is probably a trick question right here at the end. So 4/16ths, that's going to be 2/8, and I got to do it again, so that's 1/4. And the reason I had to do it again is that was not an odd number, it's an even number. 12/16ths is going to be 6/8. Still got to divide, that's going to be 3/4. And now it's done because the top is odd. And like I said, this one's kind of a trick question. It's already done. If the top number is odd, there's nothing you can do. That's reduced. So you're going to be required, if your answer is in a fraction, to reduce it. sometimes, in many cases actually, it's more helpful to be using decimal numbers. We saw that with the metric system. So with this, we have these fractions. We're going to work on converting them into decimals. So I think everybody here would probably know that 1/2 is 0.5. No big deal. But I'm more interested in how you go about doing this. So for example, the way you go about doing it, because you might not know every fraction's decimal equivalent like you do a half. So the way you're going to go about doing this is do the top number divided by the bottom. So we're going to do 1 divided by 2, top divided by bottom. And sure enough, it's 0.5. What about this next one down here? Let's go there. 7/16. So 7 divided by 16, and I get that number, 0.4375. What about this one? So the 2 is not really, doesn't really come into play. We just automatically write it here and write 2 point. This is the part we need to turn into a decimal afterwards. So we would do 3 divided by 4, which I can tell you right now is 0.75. And so this number would be 2.75. So this number here, or like say this one, just goes out in front as a whole number. So for example, this one would be 7 point, and then we go to our calculator and we do 11 divided by 16, top divided by bottom, and 0.6875. So it would be 7.6875. Now I know your calculator has a 0 there, but we already established the whole number part is 7. So I would go ahead and try these other ones and then turn the video back on and see if you got the same things that I did. I would like to point out at this time that if all you're doing is watching and writing down what I write down, you are really being foolish. I would use stronger language than that, but you have to know how to do this. Just writing down what I write down and not knowing how I'm doing it is just, well, it's the definition of stupid. I'm sorry. I'm going to put it out there. Like, what's going to happen when you have to actually do this in a few minutes? So if you don't know what I'm doing and trying on your own, then you're just being lazy and you're kidding yourself. So please try it. Listen, go back, rewind the video and find out what I was doing. Don't just write down what I'm writing down. That's not going to work. So this one's going to be 4.5 divided by 8, 625. We'll go all the way down here. So this one is going to be equal to 15.9 divided by 16, 5625. And this one's going to be 6.7 divided by 8, 875. And this last one, not enough space, we'll do it down here. 15.15 divided by 16, 0.9375. All right, so those are 2 skills that you're going to need in a few minutes. Now let's move on to actually measuring things. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, when we are dealing with an inches ruler, generally it will be broken up into 16ths. So this is a blown up version of that. So ask yourself then, what would this right here, if I measured something to that line, what would it be? What I would suggest that you do is count the 16ths. So if I go starting here at 1, notice I don't start at the end of the ruler in this case, because just like this one, I start here, not at the end. Some rulers you start at the end. Like these, you start at the end. But these I do not. So I would go 1, right? I start here, I go 1 step, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That would be 7/16. And I'm done. I don't have to reduce because that's a 7. We're good. It's odd. So what about this one? What if I went to that mark? So I would count the 16ths. 1. Oh, here's a little trick, by the way. You know this is halfway, right, between these two, and half of 16 is 8. So you could just start here at 8 and then go 9, 10. But if not, you can always go from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This would be 10/16, but we can reduce that. That top number is even. So divide both of them by 2, remember, and that's going to be 5/8. And now we're done. That's 5/8. Technically, I guess the way I've written this would be 1.76 because we are past the 1. I didn't do a great job with that. I guess the ruler goes on the other way. But if you wrote just 7/16, that's fine. But technically, I guess this is 1 and 5/8. Here, let's do this one out here. So let's try this one. So we're going to go 2, and then we count our sixteenths. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 2 and 4/16. Oh, that's really 2 and 2/8, but we're still not there. The best answer is 2 and 1/4. Now, you may be asking yourself, and I would understand completely, is what if a measurement isn't right on a line? What if it's, say, there? Well, here's the deal. We're going to just go to the nearest 16th. So, for example, in this case, if your measurement was here, I would just use this right here, the one that's closest. So, for example, that would be 2 and 11/16. If your measurement is right in the middle between the two marks, just pick one and go with it. All right, so let's practice this a couple times. For this one, we're going to measure the line here and then write down our answer as a fraction and as a decimal. So let's go through and do this. All right, so I'm looking at it. Tough to say. It's a little bit over. So I got that almost exactly at what appears to be 2.5. You can count it. It's 8/16, but that's going to be a half. So if I have 2.5, this is an easy one. I'm going to go 2.5 as a fraction, and then to get the decimal, I do 2 point, and then I do 1 divided by 2, which is going to be 0.5. And make sure I put my units, which are inches in this case. Let's try this next one. So if I line that up, let's see. Looks pretty good. So maybe like there. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Looks about 14/16. But I can reduce that. That's going to be 7/8 inches. And then to get the decimal, I do 7 divided by 8, correct? 7 divided by 8, the top divided by the bottom. And that's going to be 0.875 inches. Okay. Last thing. At the bottom there, we're going to do the area and perimeter thing again. Here's the thing. When we do that, we're only going to concern ourselves with the decimal one, so that we can use a calculator and it's much easier. So let's measure the length and the width first. So the length is all the way across here. We're going to call that, I'm going to call that 2 and 5/16. But I want a decimal, so that's going to be 5 divided by 16, so that's going to be equal to 2.3125 inches. Now let's try the width. And it's looking to me like 1 3/16. But 3/16, we want that as a decimal, so that's going to be 1.1875 inches. Now, to get the area, you're going to get a calculator out, and the area is, as you see down here, is just the length times the width. So it's going to be this number right here times this number. So let's give it a shot. So it's going to be 2.3125 times 1.1875. And we'll go 2.746. Looks like a good place to stop it, around it. So 2.746. If you wanted, you could call it 2.7461 and round this 0 up to a 1, because that's a 9. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it. Notice it's an area, so your units are in inches squared. Now, what about perimeter? Notice down here it says we're going to do 2 times the length, so 2 times this number, plus 2 times this number. So be patient on your calculator. Make sure you're hitting the buttons correctly. So we're going to go 2 times the length, which is 2.3125. Then plus 2 times the width, so 2 times this number, 1.1875, and hit equals. Now it comes out to be an even 7 inches. It's pretty impressive. So that's how you do this stuff. What I want you to do next, oh, and by the way, there's another paper that you're going to have in your notebook if you haven't already. This is just a little graphic organizer to help you count. If you count, to here, 8/16, it automatically tells you what the reduced form is. So if you have your notebook handy and the reducing's bothering you, you can always check this to see, what 12/16 is. Oh, it's 3/4. So it'll have this in your notebook for you as well. So the next thing you're going to do, I'm looking for it. Hold on. There we go. I found it. So next thing you're going to do is a familiar worksheet, but this time we're going to do it in inches. So what that means is, just like the before, up here you're not actually measuring these with your ruler. You're using their pretend ruler. So for example, this right here goes to here and would be 1, 2, 3, 4/16, which you would reduce. That's 1/4. And turn into a decimal. So you're going to divide 1 divided by 4 or 4 divided by 16, and you're going to get 0.25. So you want it as a reduced fraction and as a decimal. So every one of these has 2 answers. We'll do the next one together. So for B looks like it's in between these two, right? So we'll pick one. Let's go with this. So we're going to go that 16th. It looks like a little closer to that. So I'm going to say that is 15/16, which is already reduced. And then I just do 15 divided by 16, and I get the decimal, which is 0.9375. Oh, by the way, inches, 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 inches. Put your units. And just like before, once you get all those values, you're going to do, for number 2, you're going to do C minus A. Just use the decimal form to do that. So I just want the decimal number here. And for letter number 3 here, you're going to do E minus B. And once again, just do the decimals. On the back, you're measuring the same distance as we measured before, except you're doing them in inches. And the 2 blocks here, one is for fractions. The top one will say is for your fractional answer, and the one at the bottom is for your decimal answer. So let's do this. Let's do this one right here. So this one right here wants us to measure from here, that corner, to here, which is really the distance from this line to the center of the circle. So I take my ruler, I line it up. Notice I line up with the beginning mark. If I was doing a ruler where the beginning of the measurements were at the end, I would line up the end. Line that up, and I would get, looks like it goes to about here. So I'm going to call that 1, and that would be 8/16, 9, 10, 1 and 11/16. So I would write that here, 1 and 11/16, and then I would write the decimal form here. And by the way, inches, 11 divided by 16 to get the decimal, and that's going to be 1.6875 inches. So fractional answer, decimal answer. So that's the way that's going to work. I think we're going to probably stop there for today. That might leave us with a little extra time. We'll see. But I'd like to stop there for today if we could. If we do go on to the next assignment, it will just be the same kind of thing, measuring with inches. So we'll see. We'll play that by ear. But this should definitely be enough to get you started.